gentlemen, it is 2:01, 2:02 in the afternoon. I'd like to call, it's Thursday, February 1st, excuse me. I'd like to call the CRA meeting to order. We have quorum. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman Pro Tem. All right, Mr. Cox, do we have any modifications to the agenda today?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
We would like to modify the agenda, moving
We're going to
switch 8.01 and 7.01.
Okay. All righty. Any questions on the modification?
Yeah, what was the switch again?
We're just flip-flopping the two because one has no public speakers and the other I think we'll spend a little bit more time on.
Okay, very good.
Sound good? Any other questions? Great. All right, well, presentations 3.01, Tallahassee Downtown Improvement Association Bicentennial Proposal, Elizabeth Emanuel. Great to see you, Elizabeth.
Likewise, thank you. This is an exciting opportunity to present this to you all today. This is something that we have been working on for actually a number of years now. And before that, this was an idea that came from the late, great Gerald Inslee and one of his articles. For those of you that may not be as familiar with our organization, we're the Downtown Improvement Authority. We've actually had the opportunity to work with the City of Tallahassee for over 50 years and with the CRA since the 90s. We've got four main avenues of what we do: events, promotion, advocacy, and beautification. We get our funding through a number of different sources. We're not just reliant on our special taxing entity, but we write grants, we get sponsorships, and through a lot of those opportunities, we've been able to put on over 116 events last year. We had a lot of people come into downtown from outside areas, and we had the opportunity for 240 businesses to pop up in our downtown. We're providing a lot more opportunities for retail and small businesses to see what it's like to live and work in downtown. One of the things that we have really grown in the past 5 years is our placemaking through art. From graffiti abatement to beautification, we've really been working on placing 17 different art projects throughout downtown. It's exciting because we've gotten to work with 31 different groups on the volunteer aspects and input and folks that are coming to prep and paint these walls. And we've also gotten to hire 66 different artists, which is a really exciting opportunity to grow the creative class in our community. Two of the projects that I'm the most proud of was the opportunity we had to work with the Atatiki Museum in the Seminole Tribe of Florida. They were able to come into our community and place their creation story along one of the walls that had previously been covered with vandalism. And it was the first opportunity that we had to have the Seminole Tribe create their own imagery in our community. We've been involved with the Bicentennial Steering Committee for a few years now, and last year at our market, we had the opportunity to kind of launch the Bicentennial. The mayor was there to give a great welcome and cut the cake with us, and we've spent the year planning and working with a team of others on how to celebrate our community. We had a great kickoff event on New Year's Eve. We were proud to have some of the commissioners there, where we showcased a lot of the different talent and welcomed in an exciting year. One of the best things about the Bicentennial is the opportunity to share the history of our community. When I learned about the founding of Tallahassee through Gerald Inslee's article, I realized that, including myself, there were a lot of people that may not know that, the Cascades and the natural environment were what drew people in for hundreds of years. But then John Lee Williams and William Lee Simmons were part of the legislature that were traveling back and forth from Pensacola to St. Augustine, and were told to settle in the middle because it was taking too long. And there's a wonderful story about the men and how they got here, rafts that were man-made and meeting on horseback and surveying the different area and finally selecting Tallahassee because of its natural beauty. And so because of that, we have been working on placing a sculpture in Cascades Park between the two water features. It's something that is a flat land that's very accessible around all sides so that people can come and enjoy the sculpture and learn about the history. And I'm really excited to go to this next slide because these were just sent to me. But these are the renderings that the FSU Master Craftsmen and their interns and their team of artists have put together for us to commemorate not just the men that founded our community, but the actual natural environment. And it was important for us in celebrating 200 years that we take a look at the talent that we have here right now, because we have come a long way. We have incredible artists and members of our community that are building a better and brighter future. We had them use reflective surfaces so that people could see themselves mirrored in the images of our environment and lit from within. There's a quote that this is kind of inspired by from John Lee Williams. He said, "Tallahassee is high-rolling and well-watered. A more beautiful land can scarcely be imagined." And we think that that is so indicative of how beautiful and wonderful our community has been and continues to be. We've had a long run with this. Sorry, I included it again because I'm really proud of it and very excited by it, and hopefully you all are too. We've had a long run with a series of funding. We have written several grants and received them. The Knight Foundation and the Community Foundation of North Florida have been exceptional partners in this. We've spent a lot of time in the design, getting feedback, and working with different partners in the Bicentennial Steering Committee to ensure that what we are promoting is historically accurate and that there are all good people involved in this and that we are being as representative and inclusive of all parts of our community as possible. We've got a couple of goals, and I wanted to list the partners, although I will say that the partners continue to grow, and it's been extraordinary seeing the support and the excitement and enthusiasm that we've been able to build. But it's important for us to accomplish these goals to ensure that we can honor the history of our community, that we can do it diversely, that we can make public spaces safer because the statue's actually lit, so it'll provide another element of visibility and safety for our community. We really wanted to work with that university community connectivity, pulling in as much of the talent that is here now and the talent that will be here in the future as possible, and kind of build those community champions. You know, I know you all are working hard towards that, and it's a goal of ours too, so it's exciting to have the opportunity to, work hand in hand on this. We do have an updated budget. We've, again, gotten a lot of different grants. We've gotten a lot of great in-kind partnerships. We've had great private businesses come on board to offer an incredible amount of support. And to date, we've raised over $115,000. We have increasing site prep costs that are adding to our budget as well. We learn more and more about engineering and what it takes to ensure that the sculpture is safe and can sustain a wind load and be hardwired appropriately. So those things are a little bit of a shift and a surprise sometimes. But we have a very aggressive timeline and a lot of buy-in from folks to help make this possible. We wanted to come to you today to, first of all, tell you that this is what's going on and to be able to share our hard work with you all, and then let you know that our plan is to continue working on the site prep costs and come back before the downtown CRA, as we'd really like to solidify a partnership with them so that this can be a great collaboration between the Downtown Improvement Authority, the City of Tallahassee through the Parks of Rec and Neighborhood Affairs Association, and the CRA, because it's always a wonderful thing when we can show that folks are working together and ensure that we have a beautiful statue that will commemorate the work that we have accomplished, the 200 years behind us, and of course the 200 years to come. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this with you today. We look forward to coming back again with updated numbers and more supporters, and I'm here to answer any questions should you all have some.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with you to have some one-on-one about this. Could you go back to the list of partners or contributors that you had listed there?
Yes, ma'am.
I see, FAMU's not included in there. Was FAMU a part of this?
We haven't had the opportunity to meet with them yet, but that would be a wonderful partner to bring to the
Please
table.
do. They have a fine arts area as well as School of Architecture. So bring them in so we can make sure that it's,
Full circle, yes,
circle,
ma'am.
right.
I imagine those architecture students could help educate me a lot on some of this architecture and engineering that we're
in the
encountering,
fine arts because they do sculptures.
without question.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. We're on item number 3.02. Mr. Executive Director.
Okay, I do not see a representative from Housing Community Resilience.
Sounds great.
so-
We'll reschedule for the next meeting for that presentation. We're on item number 4.01, public comment on agended items.
We have two.
At this time, we have about 10 speakers on agenda item number 7.01.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Well, I'm going to look in the public right now and say, you're more than welcome to testify now. We're going to be on the agenda item probably just a couple of minutes. You'd rather wait and testify on the agenda item. Is that what I'm understanding? You'd rather testify when we're on the agenda item? Okay. So let's move forward with the consent agenda. Anything been pulled off consent?
No, sir.
Excellent.
Move consent, Mr. Chairman.
Consent
Second.
has been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams Cox. Any further comment? All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. We are now on item number, the newly numbered 7.01, Downtown District Policy Formation and Direction, grant request from the Landmark Hospitality. Mr. Executive Director.
Yes, we have the owner here to give you a presentation explaining their request. It has been recommended to you all from the DRC for approval, and she's here. And then if you have any questions, we have Sherry Curtis to give some background.
All right. Very good to see you.
Good morning, good afternoon, I'm sorry, I'm used to morning time. We do have Ms. Ashley Cheney here, owner of the Hayward House, to give a brief presentation. And
Janie, thank you so much for coming.
Hello, everyone.
How's business?
So far, so good.
Good.
Thank you all for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Ashley Cheney. I am the owner of Hayward House. I am also a proud Tallahassee resident, and very excited to explain to you a little bit about what we're doing over there. So we are Hayward House. We're located at 228 South Adams Street, the iconic corner in downtown Tallahassee, which was once occupied by Andrews for the last 50 years. We entered into our lease agreement in August to occupy the 4,000 square feet of street front retail space and have undergone quite a significant renovation. So when I took ownership of the corner, it was in really bad disrepair. We had boarded up windows, old electrical. We needed completely new kitchen equipment, new electrical, HVAC, the walk-ins. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. There had been very minimal upkeep, and it was in such disrepair that it was going to take someone like me and my partners to undergo this renovation because we care about downtown and we care about Tallahassee. So we are very proud of this retail establishment, which now is Hayward House. So it was vacant for about 6 months when we decided to take it over. Our initial hope was to finalize the renovations, staffing, menu, kitchen repairs, et cetera, by January 10th in order to be able to make our legislative session. And because of a lot of hard work, we were able to finish it a little bit earlier. So this is just going to give you a little bit of an idea of all of the, some of the things that we had to encounter. The electrical was in really horrible disrepair and was a lot more significant than we had anticipated. The restrooms were another big ticket item. We had to completely renovate and gut that. We were hopeful to do less and ended up being more, as anybody who's done renovations, I'm sure, is very familiar with. The patio space is where we're looking to continue to put some improvements in. We have replaced all the furniture, but we are looking to further improve that space. The kitchen, again, was none of the equipment we were able to save, so we had to completely replace all the equipment. We are looking to make another investment in that as we continue to grow our business, which hopefully will continue to be successful. So I am Ashley Cheney. I am the owner of the business. I am a woman. I'm very proud of the project that we have done. We've also looked to employ other women, for many reasons, but primarily because they're very talented women in the project. I think that's, I'm very proud of that. So we currently on staff have, well, as of a week and a half ago, we had 56 employees on staff. We've hired more. 4 of those are full-time salaried employees. And so it's an enormous economic impact to downtown. The vast majority of our employees live in the downtown core. And so you can see, we're, again, very proud of the economic impact that we're making for the city of Tallahassee. So something else that I think is important to note is there's been a lot of talk about an 18-hour downtown. I believe in that. I believe in a very vibrant downtown. I have invested heavily in this. And so we are excited about what's happening and the amenity that we're going to be able to provide at Hayward House for all of the incredible development that's happening downtown with the business school, with the new housing that's being developed, with all of the new businesses that are relocating to downtown. And we are very excited to be an amenity for all of these folks. So in closing, I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to present today and for the support of the city and for downtown and for Elizabeth for supporting our vision in Hayward House. And we look forward, if you have not already been in, we look forward to welcoming you in soon. If there's any questions,
Any
I'm here to
questions for
answer.
Ms. Cheney? Nope, thank you very much.
Yep.
Ms. Carter, anything?
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Matlow.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just for clarification, the funds being requested from the CRA is for work that's already been completed or new renovations?
So we're looking to do some more renovations that will be further improving the corner, but it's a little bit of both, I would say.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Carter, any other formal presentation?
No formal presentation, Mayor. I'm here to answer any questions you all may have.
That's great. I'm assuming that they've worked well with the CRA. There's no problems with the application. They've met all the requirements.
That is correct. They applied in October, and since our program that they applied for is our medium and large redevelopment program, allows us to fund renovations and improvements that are 6 months prior.
Sounds great. All right, any action?
Mayor, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend option 1 is recommended by staff.
Excellent. Motion's been made for staff recommendation for the approval of the grant by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second to the motion? I will second the motion. Further discussion?
Thank you. I was yielding. I was looking back for Commissioner Matlow because I know he serves on the DIA, so I thought that he was, but it's done.
All right. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, let me thank you for your investment in downtown. I really appreciated the detail in the application and knowing what you put into it. I do have some reservations just as an agency and how we move forward, particularly, as projects come to us that aren't necessarily new structures or that actually increase the tax increment that we collect as an agency. That's a concern for me. Secondly, I'm worried about setting a process where we're paying for projects that have already been completed to some ability, because I look at renovations downtown and I don't want it to say, well, I did this last year, and can you then fund a part of it before I understand the reasoning for having to get it open but before session, particularly downtown with how business is driven. But my concern is, as an agency, how we process those, how we bring those in. I think, previously we've had programs like the facade improvement match for exterior improvements that can move a lot quicker than maybe coming through a board meeting or even giving staff the ability to have a checklist of, as long as it meets these criteria, it can move forward for approval. So I'm in a hard place because I really like the project. I want to help the project, but I think we need to step back as these projects keep coming forward because we haven't set up proper guardrails, and I think we risk going down, every project that has internal renovations downtown. I don't think we should be funding that. We should be looking for new development and public investment in like we're doing on North Monroe Street. We've had conversations about, Adam Street. I would still like us to pursue how we can work more collaboratively with the streetscape there. We've had conversations, I think, about even trying to make it a more pedestrian zone. So respectfully, I'm going to have to vote no on it, but I hope as an agency we can look to, and even the future improvements to the facade and outside area. It sounds like this is going to pass, but I think we should put something in place going forward. If we want to reinstate a facade outside improvement program, let's go ahead and put the building blocks so people know exactly what they can apply for and get it done more expeditiously. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cox, with past CRA funding, the project had to be completed, if I'm understanding, before they actually received the dollars in some of our projects. Is that correct?
Most of the time. So we do allow for, because of the nature of renovation, if you apply and then start the work, you can move forward with doing the work, but just understand that you're not obligated to receive funding from the CRA board. So if the board were to decide to not, fund you, that was a risk that you took when you move forward with your renovation. Okay. So they are aware of that when they apply, that there's not guaranteed that you will receive funding, but because of how our schedule is lined up with our meetings, we don't require them to have to wait, 3 or 4 months to start work on renovation because of that. So that's kind of why we have the, if you were to, 4 to 6 months kind of thing, if you were to start in that time frame, within reason, we would allow that to come to the level of getting to you all.
Perfect. You did exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be explained why we were where we are and why what has been requested is within our criteria as stated. And if we want changes, now is not the time to do it while we have an applicant who's followed all the rules. We don't move the goalposts. We look at it down the road, and if we decide as a board we want to do something, we do it then. We don't do it in the middle of an application. I want to applaud them for stepping in, because otherwise we would have had another open hole in downtown that would have been really embarrassment with so many people in town. So I'm glad that you're actually, and I'm listening. I'm going to say this because I'm one too. I'm glad you're a woman. I'm happy about being one myself. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for hiring people to help us with this economic development, especially in the beginning of the year. I applaud what you're doing and being able to afford to do it and then look for help. I think that it was very gutsy, very strategic, and I'm glad that it worked out. And I'm glad to be a part of helping to make sure you're able to recoup and continue to move forward, because we do say that we want an 18-hour downtown. And for those who own businesses downtown and around the area, we can't want it sometimes, and then sometimes don't want it. So either we want it or we don't. And so I'm ready to support it, but I wanted to make sure that those who were listening understood why it was done the way it was done, Mr. Cox. And a facade grant is a small amount of money, and what she's needing is more than for the facade grant. The facade grant is what, 20, 50, whatever. What's the limit on the facade grant?
$50,000 for
Okay.
the exterior.
So this is not a facade project. This is a wholesale redo project that has turned out to be successful. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
I got Commissioner Porter and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank you as well for investing in our downtown, especially since I live downtown on North Franklin, so I, do as much as I can to take part in our downtown. I have a couple of questions, though. And I think that I share some of the concerns Commissioner Matlow stated. I think it's important, and we've talked about this a lot. In general, and I know we're here to vote on this item, but I don't feel like we really have a comprehensive vision or guide for really how we're moving forward with the downtown CERA. I mean, so some of this, clearly we have money that we need to spend that, I mean, this is coming from an uncommitted fund balance from fiscal year '22 of master project funds. I spoke to you, Mr. Cox, earlier, so the balance of that is what, about 3 million?
About 3 million, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so that's unrestricted in the sense that that's not specific to this grant, correct?
Correct. So for the Greater Frenchtown South Side, we created a line item for the different categories of funding for the medium and large, for the facade grant. For downtown, because typically they are large-scale projects, we don't create a specific line item. We leave it uncommitted, and once an application comes and presents itself, then we present that to you individually based on that. Now, if there was for example, an infrastructure project, then that would create a line item, and we would budget for that, and that would be, kind of removed from the uncommitted balance.
Okay, and has this property received grant funds from the downtown CRA before?
I believe it has, I'm trying to remember.
I think it had patio improvements, right?
It
Less
was
than 10 years
facade,
ago.
You remember the year on that one? Years ago, but it did receive some funding for exterior improvements.
On point, though. That was a different applicant and a different owner. The same could be made that you have a new owner that had to replace all the kitchen equipment on this particular application. So to just state that it's received funding in the past when it's a different applicant, I see it as two different issues.
I see it as two different things, too. May I continue? The point that I'm really getting at is we have made the distinction before between interior and exterior renovations, and I don't see it as being a bright line, but when we're thinking about how we justify using taxpayer dollars it has to be for a public benefit. And it's not that I don't see a public benefit here. I'm having a conversation and thinking through what kinds of, so let's say, what kind of protection do we have, if any, if we give a grant such as this and a business closes? And the kinds of money, the funding that we're supporting, whether it's equipment or whatever. I know some of those things are ineligible and other things are. So what kind of security do we have, if any, if in the event of something like that?
Well, that is one of the reasons why the improvements that we do cover are attached to the building, so you can't take them away. So the idea is that the property was, worth this much, and now with the improvements, it's worth this much. So even if that business failed, a new tenant can come in and take from where they were and keep going. So that is part of it, but if we're trying to help some of these businesses, that's part of the risk that we have to take, and that's part of why we request documentation as far as your business plan, things like that, to really try to make sure that we vet them as much as possible. But again, when it comes to a business, there's no guarantee. So that is part of the give and take with some of these projects. New construction is always going to be the highest valued. So if we do any kind of, if we do anything other than that, any renovation is not going to move the needle like new construction. So we are currently, as far as staff, we are working on having some modifications to our programs for you all, hopefully in the next couple of months, to look at and kind of go over. So some of these questions, I think, will be answered in some of that new language.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question, maybe for you, Ms. Cheney. So have any of the exterior renovations, like that were discussed in the item for the patio, the facade, the entryway, the streetscape, Have any of those been completed yet? Just the furniture? Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. I will support this item, but I really do want to see us, as you said, kind of explore. I just really hate, sometimes I feel like we're picking winners and losers, and I want to make sure, especially if we have this money that's out there, that it's really getting out there in a predictable fashion so that we're doing everything we can to support our downtown businesses, which I know is everyone's goal. I would feel more comfortable, though, if I felt like we had a little bit more of a vision and a plan for how we do that. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just wanted to clarify, Commissioner Williams-Cox, I don't see any problem with supporting this. It's completely within the structure of the CRA and our authority. My point of bringing up the conversation is just looking at it. My worry is this, right? We've had a lot of development downtown, even with the last year. What if Poco Vino comes and asks us for $500,000 tomorrow for the renovations they did? What if the Governor's Inn comes and asks us for $1 million tomorrow based on the renovations they did, or La Florida or other downtown businesses? I don't want to go down a track where we don't have the proper guardrails in place for the types of applications, the budgetary limit of the ask, particularly internal improvements. And I would love to have a program downtown that supports the types of things we're seeing here, but I'd like to see us look at it as an annual cap. Maybe that's $200,000 a year, just speculating, of what we're willing to put in from the downtown budget to help to encourage new businesses to come. I think the majority of the money being spent on external facade improvements would be my personal preference. And then when we're looking at total budget costs, making sure the CRA is not putting in more than 10, 15, maybe 20%. Have a conversation about that. That's the real conversation I'm requesting to have. And this project just has kind of got caught in the middle of it, and based on their timeline had to move faster than others. But it is unique because, Mr. Cox, I don't believe we've ever funded a completed project that we haven't voted to fund during its construction. I can't remember a time we've had done that. So that would be something new we would be doing for this project. We have always made sure we held our funds and made sure they got their project completed before we put our dollars in, which I think is prudent. So, I mean, no hard feelings on this vote at all to the project. I'll be a customer, but I just think as an agency, we got to start somewhere and start having that conversation, or this wagon's going to run away. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you all, too. My wife used to be a waitress at Andrews, and his wife was one of my instructors in graduate school at FSU, so we have a long history as a family with the restaurant that sat on that corner for 50 years. So thank you all. Thank you for your willingness to invest in our downtown area. And and I think that, you all got your application in, staff reviewed it, you did everything that was asked of you to be qualified for this funding, and I think it's no more than fair that we provide that funding at this point and not question the project. If there are issues that we need to look at in the future, which I heard staff clearly say they're already looking at and will bring some recommendations to us in the very near future, then that would be the time for this kind of discussion, not when we've got an applicant here who has met all of the requirements that were asked of them. The application was reviewed by staff and approved, and a recommendation brought to us for approval. And I think that at this point, we need to adopt the motion that's been made and then come back with the discussion on the items that staff has said they're working on to address some of the issues that have been brought here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds great, and I'm going to support it too. You have a majority of the support. The motion's going to go through. Commissioner Matlow, I agree. I would love to hear some of your thoughts. I mean, you are the only restaurateur up here who has received CRA funding for Gain Street Pies.
Yeah.
We can learn from your experience going through that process. It's a different CRA. It was Southside Frenchtown CRA, but I think that's worthy of the conversation. I think it's great that you're investing in downtown Tallahassee. We appreciate it. We need to invest in retail and restaurants in downtown Tallahassee. We've been hearing that loud and clear from the citizens that live here to bring back a vibrant downtown. We need to explore more options. So I am going to support the motion on the table. Motion's been made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Mayor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Matlow in dissent. Mr. Executive Director, we are on number 8.01, 2021 Holton Street.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think there's a clicker. I have a presentation to give you all. What we're here to discuss is the special categories grant that we have received from the state. Thank you. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how do we proceed moving forward. The building is about 1,600 square feet. It was built in 1947. We acquired it in 2019. It's located in the Bond neighborhood at the corner of Osceola and Holton Street. When we acquired it, we had several people looking in a building. It needed to be shored up structurally. So I have a series of photographs I wanted to let you all see. All right, so the building needs a substantial renovation and repairs. When you walk in the building, we've had to stabilize the roof structure. The roof itself, the building wouldn't support the roof when we acquired it. So for safety purposes, we had to shore it up. This is the view when you first walk into the building. Currently, it may not be at building code and ADA compliance levels for the bathrooms, the building structure, ramps, railings, plumbing, electrical, and possibly windows. Here's some more of the shoring that you see. The floor itself there's a slope on it. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 inches across the building as far as the slope that would need to be repaired. The restroom, right now there's only one restroom in there. It has some slits for windows that would need to be repaired as well. The doorway was very small, so it would need to be at an ADA standard. Another room in the building. This is the back area that would lead to the restroom, and this is the window to the bathroom. A couple more. Then this is the exterior of the building, looking at the southeast corner of the building. Then this is the north east corner of the building. Those two, the wooden, I believe they were using it for storage, and where the mural is, those are not original to the building. For this particular grant, repairs or renovation can only be done to the original building, so that wouldn't be eligible under this grant for historical preservation. And then the last photo I have for you this is the entrance. As you can see, there's a steep drop. So ADA compliance, either railing or ramps, would definitely need to be required for entry into the building. So when we come to the grant itself, it was, just to recap, the grant amount from the state is $250,000. The CRA matched that in kind for the purposes of the grant. There's a tentative amount from the Bond Neighborhood First of $302,000. For the purposes of the grant, the budget was $500,000. Now, when we put that number together, that was based off of renovation, not historical restoration. So there are concerns that that could be an issue. As far as the requirements, it is for historical restoration, not renovation. We must hire an architectural consultant to oversee the work being done to the property, as well as do the construction documents, which we currently do not have. There's going to be a 10-year restrictive covenant placed on the property if we agree to the grant. And then we have essentially 2 years to complete the work. Now, we can ask for an extension, which I've already spoke with them. It would not be a problem. Although we received the grant in July, we did not receive the grant application, grant agreement until the 10th of January. So they will work with us because of the large delay. It was on their part. They've had some staffing issues that delayed getting that agreement to us. So we won't be penalized for any time that has been lost by that. So I'm not worried about the timeline. If that was a question for anyone. So again, staff has some concerns regarding historical restoration and if we have enough funds to actually complete the project. So typically it requires more labor, there's more expensive, as well as the materials can be harder to find. So supply chain issues could be something that we come across with the restoration of the building. And as the owner of the building, that is something that I am concerned with, that if we start the project, I believe we are obligated to complete it. So if we don't have enough dollars to complete it, we need to figure out what is our next step. So again, I'm sorry, did I press the wrong button, I believe? Oh, okay. So there are some zoning changes that I want to make sure you are aware of. Currently, the zoning is residential preservation 2 is currently being reviewed to change the Osceola corridor to neighborhood boundary, which would allow for more uses when it comes to commercial and retail. Currently, residential preservation 2 does not allow for virtually any commercial or retail use. It's primarily residential. So there are, benefits of the change. Staff supports the change to neighborhood boundary. And then again, we're at a point where what I need from you all is, do we sign the agreement? Do we not do the agreement? But to take into consideration that the cost of construction may exceed the $800,000 that is potentially available to this project. And the numbers that we have are for for renovation, not historical restoration. And so if there's any numbers that exceed beyond that 800, are we willing to look at that? Are we willing to invest in that? And that is a concern that we have that I wanted to bring to you. So it's not just about signing the agreement, are we committed to completing this project? Now, I will admit that the community is, they're willing to put that $300,000 into it, but I don't believe that it's enough. We won't know that it's enough until we do the floor plans, and then we have contractors bid on those floor plans to really know what that true number is. That is going to be 50 to 60 grand to do those floor plans, from what I'm hearing from a few architects. So again, that's an investment that we will have to pay for to even get the ball rolling. So I did want you all to be aware of it before we move forward with, acceptance of this grant. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Mr. Cox? Commissioner Williams Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Remind me of how much the CRA purchased this building for.
220, I believe, 25 or 26?
26, I think was the
26,
closing cost.
226,000.
Okay, in 2019.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Cox? Mr. Cox, who is responsible for bringing back the plans for historic preservation? You and your team in the CRA, or is it the neighborhood group that is spearheading this project?
Well, after they requested us to apply for it, it became our grant. So it is responsibility of the CRA to execute grant, and because it is our building.
Okay, but we're talking about doing historical preservation overlay of this property, which includes floor plans in detail, but yet we have not decided what is going in yet, hence the reason why we received the list from the neighborhood, correct?
Yes, and so those were questions that I had from conversations that were still up in the air. Some of these pertain to the grant, some did not. I did have concerns about the future use of the building, who's going to operate it, things like that. So those were questions that I had. Some of those didn't necessarily pertain to if we should accept the grant or not, but I did ask that of them.
Who is going to retain ownership of the building once complete? Once it's complete, it's fully restored, the whole 9 yards. Are we a landlord now, and we have tenants, or is there going to be a third party, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, that will own and manage the building?
Currently, we are the owner. We would be the owner unless we chose to dispose of the property.
And liability.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Let's go to public comment.
Thank you very much. At this time, it appears as though we do have 11 speakers on this item. So I will start with the list. If you would, come to the podium, your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes. There's a light on the dais that will go from green to amber, yellow to red to conclude your comments. So the first person that I have on the list is Ms. Donna Cotterell, followed by Mr. Kufu. Name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
My pleasure. Donna Pearl Cotterell. I live in the Bond neighborhood, actually 2 blocks from the Robinson store. And I know from my accent, it doesn't sound like I was born or raised here, but my family goes back 5 generations on my dad's side, 6 generations on my mom's side. I'm here in this area. And my mom actually lived on Saxon Street before I was born. I love the Bond community. I think that we are deserving of a space to be preserved for the history of the neighborhood, but also a place for our young children to get homework help, tutoring. Right now, when I need to get copies made, I have to go up to Appalachia Parkway or Monroe Street to Staples. And from what I've been told and speaking with the folks who are organizing the renovations and the restoration, hopefully, that we'll be able to get those services done right there in the community, and that there will be resources for seniors. I'm a senior now myself, and it'd be nice to have some services that I can walk down the street for. And I love the Bond community. I think it's a special place, and to have that history preserved is so important. And I'm going to say, today is my daddy's birthday. He would have been 90, and his footprint is on the Heritage Walk. And having our history in places and spaces where we can see them on a day-to-day basis gives our children and our neighborhoods pride. So I'm asking that we find the resources. If we don't have them already, I told Mrs. Perkins I'm able to write grants, and I know construction projects usually take twice as long and cost twice as much money. I believe one of the grants is a 2-year grant. Perhaps in the process, we can get more funding to support this project, and I wholeheartedly support it myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Mr. Kufu, followed behind Mr. John Nelson Sr., followed behind Mr. Jarvis Rozier.
Joining us, your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Wazer Kufu, 614 Howard Avenue. First, I want to apologize. I almost ran over you at the airport, so I was in the hurry. But
You good. Don't worry about it.
I come to speak on this issue. Today is the beginning of Black History Month. And, you know, there's so much going on in the Black community. You got people here wanting to do something to help. Even myself, I went to Bond. I come from a poor family. It was 9 of us. Family High was right across the street from me. I lived in Allen subdivision, and it was Canal Street before they named it Family High, Family Way. We had to walk 2 miles to Bond School because my mother and father couldn't pay the $5 to enter Family High. I know Bond neighborhood very well. I know Mr. Robertson, who owned the store. My father did the fireplace of their house. We did some work on the building also. Bond is such an important community for the Black community. You know, FAMU, during football season, they take up all the community with parking and all. You go to Perry Street. That's where a lot of people come, the old school rappers, they come there. But, you know, it's like all y'all be coming to Black History events, and you honor these people, Martin Luther King, we're all getting along, everything better, but that's not the case. You know, y'all still taking our property. We never have a time to express ourselves, what we want. You know, I'm practically every civil rights building in the city. My company, Pyramid Construction, renovated. I hear the numbers y'all are talking about, which are ridiculous for trying to renovate a little building like that. Marble dry cleaners. My company renovated. Barrington Barbershop was in Marble Dry Cleaners building. Miss Hoffman building. They told her that building couldn't be built back. Look at it now. My company renovated. The old fountain there, that was Dr. Foote building. And he really took me on his wings and told me I was his project. But to own that building, it really helped me to be where I am today. The pharmacy building set there now. I was born and raised, the pharmacy building set where I was raised at. I have a lot of attachment to the Black community. I changed my name. We were slaves. We didn't know who we were. I changed because I wanted to identify with my people. I wanted to identify with my culture. I don't want nothing, but I want to see the best for my people. They've suffered too much. Smoky Hollow gone. Rat Row gone. I had people live in each one of those places. So I'm asking you now to consider what they're asking. Consider what they're asking.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have is John Nelson Sr., followed behind Jarvis Rozier, followed behind Reverend Joseph Manning.
Thank you for joining us. Your name
Good
and
afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you. John Nelson Sr. from 495 Melrose Drive, Monticello. What is the Monticello guy doing in Tallahassee? Mr. Mayor, good to see you. We spent some time together at the University of Florida getting our credentials. I'm past chair of the Board of County Commissioners from Jefferson County, and I have basically worked many years after getting off the board doing this kind of work, historical preservation. As a matter of fact, for the last 5 years, I have done quite a bit of work in the African-American community in Jefferson County. I'm talking a little bit ecstatic now because I had to have credentials. I've had a fall, and by the way, I'm getting a little old now. February 17th, I'll be 76 years old. But I'm just grateful and glad to be here. But I've spent for the last 5 years in Jefferson County with historical preservations, and I do a tour now. I just did one recently, and I take people through there to show them some of the things that happened years ago in Jefferson County, and the reason that it needs to be upgraded, it's because it even helps ecotourism for our area. Now, you have a lot of money here in Leon County and in Tallahassee, so you don't need ecotourism, I don't guess, as much as you, but I'm here just to support this process. One of the rationales behind this, because I actually was influenced by Mr. William Robertson and his wife, Mela Robertson. Mela was a church mother in mine. I was her chairman deacon. And they impact the things that I needed to know early on as a chairman deacon in their church, and our church primarily. And so they actually imparted with me the wisdom and knowledge of surviving as business people. Both were very successful business folk. And also they were farmers. So a lot of things they probably had in their store, yes. I was at their store quite a bit because as 33 years in state government, I basically would go down and talk to Mr. Robinson. Had many meals at their house. So I'm here to support the people of Leon County and Tallahassee, the Bonds Community Project, because I believe in historical preservation. In my closing, here is this. Moses was trying to lead the children of Israel, but he never got to where he was supposed to do to the promised land. But he selected a guy by the name of Joshua. And what Joshua did was he told the people that Moses didn't get there after 125 years, but I'm going to lead you. He had some of the same experiences, but what happened was he had to cross what we call the Jordan River. And he did something that most people don't do today. After they had crossed it, all the ministers and all of that, then he went back and he said, 12 of y'all, go back out in that water, pick up a stone, take it back where you're going to lodge tonight. So when your children ask, what meaneth these stones, you can tell them this is what happened.
Thank you. Commissioner. Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker I have is Jarvis Roger, followed behind Reverend Joseph Manning, followed behind Mike Rogers.
Thank you for joining us. Name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Jarvis Rozier. I reside at 2415 Charis Cross Road after my many years of Saxon and Holton Street in the city of Bond community. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor. Good evening, and the commission as well. I come before you as an advocate for the restoration of the Robinson grocery store. I come before you as I call myself a Bondonite. I grew up in Bond. I still attend church services at Greater Mount Zion there in Bond. That's been there in the community since 1927. And that was when actually Bond community became a community after being a blueberry patch. I worked with the city as far as historical. I am the chair of the Bond Historical Oral and Historical Marker Presentation Project at the Bond community there, where we are actually doing the history of the Bond community by communicating and talking with past and present residents in the community that have a foundation in the community or know the history of the community. We're working with the History Marker Project that we're finalizing now. That's going to marker we're putting in Speed Spencer Stevens Park. That's going to actually amplify those individuals in the park, in the community that have come from the park, from the community that have been historic presidents in the community. Just as one of the great things the city is doing is the Greater Bond community as working with the community action team, the upgrades that have been done with the community has been great. People and family that come home to the Bond community, that are raised in the Bond community, say, wow, those are great things that are going on. And they ask certain things, what about this place? What about that place? What about Robinson Store or Speed Store? And I would love to say to them that we're doing something with Robinson Grocery because everybody that grew up in that community and everybody that knew something about that community knew about the Robinson Grocery Store. In our research that we've done with the Bond Historical Project, we found that there were over 80 businesses in the Bond community. Some of the buildings that those businesses there are still there. One of them is Robinson Grocery Building and Speed's Grocery, which was another dynamic building and entity in the community that's still thriving in the community. Some are still there and some aren't, but the Bond community knew and recognized the Robinson Grocery Store. I'm safe to say that none stood out as a service to the Bond community as the Robinson Grocery Store did. Not to take anything away from any of the other places like Speed or others, but Robinson Store was more than not only did I catch the school bus from Robinson Store to get to Fairview and Ricketts. I remember one time I missed the school bus and I walked back home over on Saxon Street and my mom said, you could have used those steps walking to Ricketts. So I knew to be at the bus stop at 7:15. In my service, to much of the community, Robinson Store was more than just a store. People could buy groceries there. Family would buy groceries there because they couldn't travel outside of the community, and sometimes they weren't welcome outside of the community. But it was more than just a store. It was a loan office. Mr. Robinson loaned money to individuals in there. You would come there, what they would call trade. You could purchase stuff for your family. I remember when $20, they used to buy groceries for a week of 8 children in our household.
Mr. Rozier, thank you very much.
Not only that, but I would like to say,
Thank you.
I'm an advocate for the program, and I would like to see the restoration of the Robinson Grocery Store.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have is Reverend Joseph Manning, followed behind Mike Rogers, followed behind C. Thomas.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us. Your name
Yes,
and address
thank
for the
you.
record.
Thank you for this opportunity. I am certainly a native of Tallahassee, as well as a native of the community right there in Bond Subdivision. Grew up on Poppy Street. My grandfather was the pastor of University Church of God in Christ, started there in 1958. And I now am the pastor of that particular church, not the same name, but I pastor that church there, right across the street from Robinson Grocery Store. Always been a place when I was a kid to go get $2, $3 of, well, we didn't have $2 or $3, we had 25 cents, so we get a Coke and 3 cookies and whatever else we have. So that place has a special meaning for the community and for us. And we would love to see that remain there for a business for our community. And I just want to ask one question. Who's standing up for the Black community to have representation in terms of a landmark for us? That's just all I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have is Mike Rogers, followed behind C. Thomas, followed behind Delatry Hollinger. Name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Hello, I'm Michael Rogers. My address is 1927 Fanny Drive, and I would like to support this project. I'd like to advocate, my deep support for this Heritage and Resource Center. I think it's really needed for the people of the Bond community, providing them access to resources, much-needed resources that they would be able to utilize. And so as a graduate of FAMU with a master's degree in architecture and a current designer at a civil engineering firm here in town, I am familiar with the Bond community. Back in 2018, I, alongside some of my brothers of Alpha Rho Chi Professional Fraternity Incorporated, we volunteered our time, talents, and efforts in helping develop a beautification project for the Bond community. And that was the first time I saw how important the development of the Bond community was for the people of the Bond community. And so as we kind of pushed our efforts further as a design team, we did speak at one of the CRA meetings, and we expressed our support for the project. We presented our design that we came up with, and, we presented the design that we came up with, and that just goes to show that there are young, emerging professionals in the area who are willing to give their time and have a passion in serving their community. And so I personally, again, I do support this project, and I am ready to devote my time and efforts in any way I can to help bring this project to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have is C. Thomas, followed behind Delatry Hollinger, followed behind Priscilla Hawkins.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hello. Chalmers Thomas, address is 2621 McCain, property owner, Bond Subdivision. Over 20 years ago, I sat on what was then called Blueprint. And they asked community leaders, citizens, to sit on this board. And of course, I volunteered to sit on the board right there on Gang Street. Representatives from Florida A&M and all around were sitting at that table, and we developed a plan. And Bonds was included. So was the businesses. And I remember attending a meeting, and all of a sudden, everything had shifted to Gang Street. Culture shock. I said, what happened? Culture shock. Well, fast forward. Citizens and bonds have been paying taxes all these years. And now, as a commissioners, you are complaining about money. Well, this is not about money. This is about restoring what was taken away. So I hope and pray that you reconsider whatever is in your mind and consider the past 20 years plus 20 years of saying something was going to happen in bonds. Now, you have an opportunity to step outside and be the first to say, listen, let's get this going. I support the project, and I leave you with this. 1 Samuel. David asked God a question. Should I pursue? And the Lord answered him and said, pursue. So we are pursuing to not only make sure that the store, the community continues to thrive. You got to remember now, bonds is in the news for more than they're about this. It's in the community, it's in the news because a lack of, because I know citizens have asked for things in the bond community and it was not granted. I know that. So please, whatever you do not push this under the rug. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have is Delatry Hollinger, followed behind Priscilla Hawkins, followed behind Furman Richardson.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Delatry Jordan Hollinger, 750 Wells Street, Historic Bond Community. And I thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I've served as president of the National Association for the Preservation of African American History and Culture, and historical preservation advocacy organization for the last 10 years. Over the course of that time, I've been a part of many efforts, local, state, and national, to preserve the stories and legacies of yesteryear, specifically as it relates to the African American experience. In fact, many of those efforts, some lost, some won, have played out right here in these chambers. In this instance, I've been a part of the bond community's efforts to preserve the historic Robinson's Grocery as a resident via the efforts of the Historic Robinson's Grocery Working Group since January 2020. And so, it should be stated emphatically that the Bond neighborhood at large has been working together to preserve this historic structure for the better part of 4 years. Board members, I've written many grants and have secured funding for numerous projects successfully. Here we've been given an opportunity to accept $250,000 of free grant money from the state of Florida. And as well, the Bond Community Action Team, or CAT team, approved the allocation of $302,020 in Neighborhood First Planning dollars to this project. On December 18, 2023, during a meeting of the Bond neighborhood hosted by the city's Neighborhood Affairs Office, more than 70 residents packed the Smith-Williams Service Center Annex, and it was stated emphatically during that meeting that the community wanted to retain Robinson's Grocery for community benefit. At this juncture, there should be no question what the feelings of the community or the CAT team are. In the Frenchtown neighborhood, where my family has owned property for over a century, the Frenchtown CAT team allocated $224,000 of its Neighborhood First Planning dollars toward the restoration of Ashmore Store. Likewise, the Bond CAT team has allocated $302,020 toward the restoration of Robinson Store. In Frenchtown, the state of Florida awarded a $717,000 grant written by city staff to Ashmore Store, which was approved by this board. Likewise, the state of Florida has awarded a $250,000 grant written by community leaders to Robinson Store with a cash match of $250,000 from the CRA's 2023 budget. At that time, the CRA voted to approve allocating its portion pending the approval of this grant. The grant has been approved, and we must approve this item, move this item forward so that we can continue to move this community, Bond, and the South Side forward. On this first day of Black History Month, I'm reminded of my late godparents and mentors in the struggle for civil rights, Miss Anita Davis and Dr. Charles Evans, who both worked tirelessly to shape the social consciousness of this city. Let's preserve this significant African-American cultural, historical, and civil rights landmark for the use of Southside residents and ultimately for the benefit of future generations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have as Priscilla Hawkins, followed behind Furman Richardson, followed behind Jacqueline Perkins.
Name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Priscilla Hawkins. I live on Button Willow Lane. And I'm here because as a member of the three-person team, community advocates who wrote this grant and worked with Mr. Cox, Mr. Norvell, Susan Ripka, Eric Case of the State of Florida Historical Resources, we were all happy to have us writing the grant. Staff didn't write any of that. We spent nights writing that. And as Delatry just said, we spent 4 days over a holiday trying to get some other monies. It's what we do for the community that we love. Now, I don't know what you guys have in mind for this building. You know, we've heard some things. This is what our community wants. We don't want Miami. We want this to really look like a residential community where families can still live. There are long-term people in this community who have been in their homes 60, 70 years, and they don't recognize some of the things that are happening. More than half of the spaces now are rental properties. Robinson's Grocery is not about money. If it's about money, then we'll find some more. We'll write more grants. If it's about a 10-year covenant to keep the building as it is, we'll work toward that. What I do as a community advocate is I take on the assignments that God gives me. And what I ask is that when I do those things, that God go before me, that he touch hearts and change minds when necessary. And if it's my heart and my mind that needs touching and changing, that he do that too. And so when I'm sitting up and I'm saying, you know, this is what I've talked to 16, 18, 20 people in the community about. This is what I've talked to 13, 20, 70 people in the community about. When I ask Neighborhood Affairs, you know, have you told the people what's happening? The 1,500 letters that, Diane, you indicated 2 years ago had been mailed to people in Bond. At least 30 people that we asked never saw that. And if it was mailed to their address, we don't know where it went. People are not being told what's happening. But what they are telling us and what we know is that people want this building. It has historical significance. It is in our hearts. And it may not look like much based on what the masses believe things should look like. It carries a lot for the people in this community because Mr. Robinson gave of himself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker we have as Furman Richardson, followed behind Jacqueline Perkins, and Mother D.K. Richardson will be our final speaker. Name and address for the record, please.
Name and address for the record, please.
3
Thanks
minutes.
for joining us.
How you doing? Furman Richardson, 1486 West Orange Avenue. Appreciate the time today, and I'm in support of this project. What I'll tell you is I turned 60 in November, and I grew up over at 2122 Poppy Street, the church, right across the street from Robinson's store. And so I spent a lot of time buying penny candy and cookies and stuff at Robinson's store and with his family. I look now at the Bond community. I go to church over there. But when I look around, I don't see Cherry Hill grocery store. I don't see Trends Barbershop anymore. I don't see the things that the neighborhood black businesses that I know coming up. I got a chance to go to schools on all sides of town. It's interesting that today I heard people give presentations about a structure, light structure, to tell you about their culture. I heard them talk about a business across the street that has history, that's a bar and a restaurant that got approval. And what I'm saying and we're saying in the Bond community is, when I tell my kids about Bond community, there are very little things I can tell them about now except for Robinson grocery store and Speed grocery store. I worked in law enforcement for the last 36 years. Crime's been crime everywhere. We got cameras in Bond community. We got cameras to show some things that were city dollars, that was government money. So my answer to you is, we'll preserve, and I see all the markers all over town, even downtown. It tells you where the black people were, but it'll tell you where the black people are. So all of the establishments that hold tight to our history, we're giving it for somebody else. I can tell you, I'm from Tallahassee, so I remember, like you said, it was Canal Street. I remember the Savoy Club. I remember all the Rattlers Den. I remember what FAMU looked like. I can tell you what Tallahassee looked like. It doesn't look the same. But I can tell you it's like an old car we restore. I've been in Killarn, and they have an old car on a set of blocks, and they're restoring it. And we say, yeah, I'll let you restore it. But I'll go on the south side, and there's an old car on the block, and you say it's just trash and junk it. We don't have the same standard on the south side of town. It doesn't appear that you have the same standard on the south side of town and in Bond community that I see on Gaines Street. I remember when the Civic Center belonged to black businesses. I know when Killarn was black businesses. We're asking you now to save something for our generations, for our children, and I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
We have Jacqueline Perkins, followed behind Mother D.K. Richardson.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Perkins, address 3437 Blue Jay Drive and 1618 Keith Street. I want to say something before I speak. We're not here for a fight. We're here to stand up for what's right. And I'm really, really sad today to know that the same group of people who spent 2 years developing a neighborhood first plan that included a component for preserving our buildings, we did that. The city got 3 awards, all for my work. And it was used as a model for the other communities. And I'm changing everything that I'd planned to say. And I'm sorry, this is going to have to be personal. Mr. Cox, we've been working with you since you came on board. You went into the neighborhood with us, as did some of the commissioners before we were able to get that building under control. We took every commissioner into Bond so they could see what Robinson Store now represented. You've been in there with us, and if we want to talk about cost, what you have as an attachment is a report that we knew about before we applied for the grant. It's a report that we knew about before the CRA board voted to give us $250,000 matching grant. Your report in here, and we have the documentation to prove it. It's unfortunate that the agenda item includes all of these inaccuracies and these falsities. We can't refute that in 3 minutes. So we have a report, and it has every email. And you know what? In the email that was sent by the city, the estimate to fix the building was $200,000. Then it went to $250,000. That's what you have in your report. And you all keep saying that there's money that the CAT team, Henry Lewis, Willeen, and I, we voted to allocate another $300,000. That's a done deal. It's not something that is pending because we voted before as a CAT team and we've been able to do that. You went out with us to that building. We had contractors who gave estimates. We have been working with you, and up until just 2 weeks ago, we were talking to the people at the Division of Historical Resources. There was never, ever a discussion about there might not be enough money. And what you said, Mr. Cox, and it's in the email, it's in the record, that whatever money didn't cover things that, were not allowable, that the $300,000 of the extra money would be covering that. And I'm really, really sad as a person who has been in this community, who we've worked. And you know what? I have to say, I would actually think that this board would embrace, would actually be appreciative, and would encourage these types of collaborative efforts between the city, the CRA, and the citizens. None of the people at the CRA it was 0 man-hours, which meant they could devote their time to other things. We wrote the grant with your permission. We have the concurrence. This is not to attack you or anybody, but let's tell the truth. Public trust is important. We have to do that. And I implore you all to accept this grant. I worked for the city for 9 years. I've never seen any grant money ever returned.
Thank you.
So please don't do that to us.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
I believe the last and final speaker we have is Mother D.K. Richardson.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Oh, I'm D.K. Richardson, and I stand before you representing 5 generations, and I come to both thank you and ask you at the same time. We thank you for what you've done in Barnes in regards to the lighting, in regards to sidewalks, in regards to doing the exterior of the houses in Barnes. We thank you. And what we've done with that effort is that we have reduced the crime rate in Barnes. But what we're asking, that since the last 75 years, the only major building that I can think of that still stands in the Barn area is the Robinson store. It's the oldest store. We have moved our boundaries so that we are coming there. And there are fewer people, there are less streets and what have you. But there is the Robinson store. That was my youngest son. I have sons older who remember the Robinson store. When we look at, we're talking about this month of Black History, and most of the people are dead that we're talking about. But if we can have the legacy of the Robinson store, it will connect that which is past, that which is present, and that is what is future. If you can find in your hearts the time, the money, the efforts, or whatever it takes to restore the shingle, chicken shack is gone. Marmira's kitchen is gone. Your Morrison store is gone. The original building for Bond School is gone. We want to hear something else besides gone. Gone. We thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
That's all the speakers that we have on this item.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to all the speakers that have come today. I think we were all sick, or many of us were sick during the last, and this meeting had to get rescheduled, but I think it provided us an opportunity to have a broader conversation, and I'm glad we have the opportunity today to continue to move forward with Robinson Store. We've had speakers come now for at least 2 years. We've debated this project, and we found the will to push it forward. with help of the community, finding a $250,000 matching grant, which is incredible. We rarely have the opportunity that people took it upon themselves to go find extra money for a project. And I think when we look at Robinson's store, it's more than just the cost of the building. We've heard it today. You can't put a dollar amount on history. You can't put a dollar amount on what's there. And once it's gone, it's gone forever. As speakers mentioned, we've seen that time and time again. But I do think we can put a dollar amount on the restoration, and I think it's within reason for what we've done through this agency on other projects. I think we have a tremendous opportunity to breathe new life for the next generation into that building. It was great to see people who remember its history, but also young people here today advocating on its behalf as well. So I tend to agree with Mr. Kufu that $800,000, I believe, can get this project done in this. I've renovated personally lots of old buildings that were in disrepair. So I would be personally shocked if it really elevates past that. But I do think as a community, if it does, we'll figure it out. We've done it with other projects. The real question is, are we committed to getting this project done, or are we not? And I think we've come this far. Let's get it across the finish line. So I move option one, that we execute the grant agreement and move forward.
Option one's been properly moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Any further comments? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, and then Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as you all know, I've said it a number of times here, and I know that many of the people, well, first of all, let me thank you all for coming and being here to speak on this item. Jackie, I want to thank you for the leadership that you've shown, the perseverance and resilience that you've shown in bringing this item thus far. As you all, many of you all know, I know everybody on this dais knows, when my wife and I were deciding where we were going to live, we decided that we were going to live on the south side of Tallahassee. This was 30 years ago, y'all. When people were telling us, you sure you want to live on the south side of Tallahassee? What's on the south side of Tallahassee for you all in that? And we could have lived anywhere we wanted to live in this community. But we decided we were going to live in a predominantly black neighborhood, which is where we are and have been for 30 years now. We built our home there. We invested in that neighborhood. We raised our children there. And so I show that kind of commitment to my community. I ran for the city commission because I knew that there were things that needed to be done in our communities that weren't being done at the time. And I'm proud to say that the fruits of our labor, my labor, in the 10 years that I've been on this dais, are showing themselves on the south side of Tallahassee and other neighborhoods that were neglected for years, that we have now invested millions of dollars in, and continue to do that even to this day, whereas before that wasn't the case. Those neighborhoods were overlooked. Promises were made and not fulfilled. But I can tell you that has been one of my sole priorities, because I still live on the south side of town. And we'll be there until Strong and Jones, my neighbor Lynn Ann Griffin, takes me away. Sister Richardson. But I say that to say this: there is no greater commitment, I think, than that. It's easy to say what you want to see happen, but when you actually do it and you commit yourself to it, that's a whole different story. I knew of Robinson Grocery Store because my brothers, who were students at Florida A&M University, lived on Okaloosa Street. And they would, when I would come to Tallahassee to visit them, they would take me to Robinson's grocery store right around the corner because that's where they went to buy food and other items. And so I say that to say this. I agree with you all that there is a need to preserve our history. And if this is an opportunity for us to do that, I certainly would support that. We're seeing so much of our history disappear. Right here in Tallahassee, my father attended the original Lincoln High School. My aunt and uncle, Bob and Annie Richardson, owned a restaurant in Frenchtown. We used to come through and visit them as we were headed up to visit my grandparents in Donaldsonville, Georgia. So my family has a commitment to the communities that existed here in Tallahassee and Leon County, and I have continued that commitment. If this is what the community wants, and obviously you all being here and the kind of feedback that we've heard throughout the community, then I'm certainly willing to work with you all to try to make that happen, to preserve some of that history that we have lost over the years. And so I would support the recommendation that staff is making and to see if we can move forward in making this restoration happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna say this, that it has been a long 4 years. When we first came, well, more than that, when we came to the commission, one of the first things when we came to the CRA, one of the first things we did was approve a $6.4 million grant for bond. And apparently some of our speakers tonight may not be aware of that because they're saying we haven't done anything. Well, I think you might need to talk to your neighbors. Plenty has been done, driven by the neighborhood first plan and the neighbors, your neighbors in the community who came with these projects, voted on them, and made them happen with the help of city staff. And we have to have the help of city staff because the city is liable for every dollar that is spent. So, of course, the city had to be there. I also don't have to prove anything to anyone about my level of commitment because I've been in the streets. 30 years prior to coming to this commission, I've worked on the South Side to get people to stand up and speak up and let's preserve things. Ricketts High School. We wanted a new high school on the South Side because we had kids wading through water to get to class. But that's not what the people in South Side wanted. They didn't want a new school. I have a problem when you can have the whole cake and you want crumbs. And so my thing is, I too want to preserve our history, but I also don't want to short circuit us on having a better life. Seeing the promised land is one thing, but living in it is another. And when we heard from the neighbors that the Robinson store was being owned by some people who were allowing bad things to happen there, we came in and purchased that store. Y'all know it's not worth $200,000 in the shape that it's in, but it was purchased with taxpayer dollars for $226,000. 220. So let's keep adding it up. I know it ain't about the money, but at some point we got to think about what else could the community use for these kinds of dollars. It is a food desert. A grocery store is needed. Yes. And if Robinson's grocery store, as we were saying, which it has not been for a very long time, because groceries ain't cigarettes, it ain't drugs, it ain't beer, and that's what was happening there. If indeed we want to preserve it, we need to make it what the community really needs, which is a grocery store. And from the pictures I just saw, I don't want my groceries coming out of anything that looks like that. So we've got to do something, but we've got to bring the past forward Be wise about it. I hear you, Mother DK. You know, we had a conversation as you were walking into City Hall. The net so far right now is if we continue to spend, we will spend $1 million in that building. $1 million in that building. Remember, $6.4 million was allocated to the community. $1 million in that building. Is that the best use of $1 million in the Bond community? Is that what is needed most of all? To spend $1 million in this one structure? Or is it worth making this structure something that we would be proud of to show our children, to have pictures of the Robinsons hung inside of it with a nice bathroom that could be used, to have an entryway where grandma in the wheelchair can get in there because now it has been made accessible so that she can get in there. What I'm saying is preserve it, but make it usable and not just a museum. Not one that you can just look at, but one that can be used. We need food, healthy choices, milk, eggs, whatever we need. We need a place in Bond where we can get that. Where is it that we can get that right now in Bond?
We're not having a conversation.
No, right, and I'm just saying, you can't get milk and from my understanding and from what I've seen, milk and eggs. I mean, there may be a convenience store, but that is not a grocery store. So what I'm saying is that the best use? Preserve Robinson's store, but bring it forward. Bring it forward. Mother DK, I see you. I appreciate you. Now, you know I love you. You know I do. I just want the best. As Kufu said, I want the best for my people. I live on the South Side too. I want the best for my people, who are all people, to have what they need. And with an investment of $1 million, I am just trying to figure out what is the best and highest possible use for those kinds of dollars. And if you say, y'all don't have to, you can stand if you like, but it's not going to change my comment. It's not going to change my thought, because I've had 4 years to think about this. And prior to that, 30 years, I worked on the South Side trying to make life better. If you say spending $1 million in this building, this one building, is going to give Bond community what it needs to go forward, then I will support it. If that's what you say. But you can't say it today. And then 3-4 years from now, we're still back here in this same spot, because it's been 4 years. And that store is still where it is. The roof and everything being propped up in it so that it doesn't fall on itself.
But yes, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you, if you don't mind, this is the time when we just have the discussion amongst the commissioners.
Yes.
If we open it up, then it's going to be a big, huge conversation, and that can we appreciate it. We do. But Commissioner Williams-Cox, you have.
I'm going to bring it in for a landing. I've said what I needed to say, because I'm hearing from other parts of your community. I'm hearing from other parts of the community who's not in the room. And you've heard me many times say, I can't just listen to the ones who make it to the room. I got to hear everybody who want to have something to say. So I've heard from others who are saying that we need to do something better. No, I'm not saying we need to knock down the building. And Ms. Perkins, you know, I've said to you, I want what the community wants. The community is not just those who make it to the chambers, but the community, what they want. And so again, if you tell me, if you believe that investing $1 million in one building in this whole community is what the community needs, then I'm all for it. But I tell you that there are those in your community who think differently. $1 million is what and we're still not sure if we'll be where we need to be after that $1 million is done. And it's my understanding that in order, when you accept this grant, you have to restore it to its historical nature. It no longer becomes renovation, it's restoration where you got to restore it to what it was, which means you can't open it up so grandmama can get in there in the wheelchair. It's got to be like it was. It is a museum. You can't buy milk and eggs out of a historical restored to. Mr. Cox, am I wrong? Didn't I understand that that's what
you are able to do renovations for ADA compliance, building codes, those kind of things.
Okay, so you can make it ADA compliant.
Yes. So those kind of repairs, in regards to restoration, can be done. Typically, you have if there are elements that are like crown molding or things like that, they try to preserve those kind of elements. If it's any kind of architectural character to the exterior, those kind of elements are what the idea is focusing on. At an expense
greater than just a renovation.
Typically, restoration does cost more.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to bring it in for a landing. I want what the community wants. And if you want to spend $1 million in a structure so that it can be preserved and not become a grocery store, which is what will cure a food desert, then I'm with you. I'm just going to have to go with you because I just, in my mind, believe that we deserve better. We deserve better. Why settle for crumbs when you can have the whole cake? And I tell you, it bothers me. It really bothers me that we keep doing that. But our children are going to come along, and you're right. They're going to ask, what meaning he by these stones? But guess what? They went and brought stones back and put them there as a memorial. They didn't bring the whole thing, the store back as it was, and put it there. They brought stones so they could tell the story of what came before it. This city is 200 years old. The Capitol was a log cabin. What if we had not moved out of that log cabin? Okay, I'm just saying, at some point, we have got to come to the present, come to the future. And spending $1 million, and I'm saying that because I'm rounding up, spending $1 million in one building in a community who has a food desert and many other issues that we are trying to work on. If that's what you want, I'm going with you. I'm just going to go with you. And I'm going to do it with a clear conscience because will have expressed what my desire was for you. And so when the children come along and say, what meaning ye by these stones? I'm going to say your ancestors wanted this building to stay just like it is or just preserve it and not move it forward. So that's where I am.
Excellent. I'm going to provide my comment, then we'll call for a vote, and we'll go from there. I appreciate everybody coming out. I will not be supporting the motion that's on the table today because I think it restricts us too much at this point. Now, let me be very clear. The CRA owns the building. There's nothing, nobody's advocating for tearing the building down or anything like that. I just think that we are a little ahead of ourselves, and I'm very concerned about accepting the state's historic preservation dollars, which does add more money to the final price tag that we do not even know how much more money it's going to cost, where that funding is going to come from, who's going to cover the cost, and that's just the brick and mortar. We haven't even gotten into the conversation, which needs to take place as well, because it deals specifically with the floor plan of how we design the interior build out of what is actually going in. I appreciate the suggestions that have come forward, and some of them are very good suggestions. But we also have to have a solid, sustainable business plan moving forward. Who's paying the utilities? Who's paying the rent? Is this the expectation that the city just absorbs all cost, or the CRA absorbs all cost? Or will the private sector be doing so? What is the best service, or what is the best commercial use for the building? Or do we just turn it completely into a museum with no other use? Does it serve a public use, meeting space, police officers, sheriff's department? There's a lot of conversation that needs to take place, and I appreciate the suggestions. But until we have a solid game plan I cannot vote in clear conscience to limit this board's ability from a business standpoint from accepting the historic preservation dollars, which locks us in and locks us into a higher price of preservation restoration that we don't even know at this point. With that, I would like to go ahead and call for the vote. The motion has been made by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor of option number 1, accepting the special category grant agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, and it passes 4-1 with the mayor in dissent.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to also offer a second motion in that if we find ourselves in a situation where we're not able to move forward with this, that we, the CRA board, will decide what happens next with the building that is owned by the CRA. Because if we determine that we do not have the funds to move forward, to do the things that we need to do, although we've agreed to accept this money, if we're not able to do it, we're going to have to do something, because what we don't want is to have a situation where we're back with the building that's being crime-ridden because nobody's doing anything with it.
I'm going to turn to the attorney before we entertain the motion. I am afraid by the action that we just took 4-1 by accepting it. I mean, are we in a position to give it back a year from now and say, yeah, no, we can't come up with the additional funding to meet the needs of the preservation dollars used on this particular property, therefore, here's your money back, state? Or are we locked in once we accept it? Mr. Attorney.
So, Mr. Mayor, if there was an amendment and the state agreed that you could either return the money or not accept the money, that would be an amendment. At least the document says that you'll perform the work. I mean, as I understand it, the state has been flexible in administering these grants, but that would, right now, the grant agreement says you'll perform the work.
Yeah, so we're locked in at this point. We can't give it back, Commissioner Williams-Cox. That was the motion that passed. We just accepted the money, and the expectation is that we do it. Mayor Pro Tem.
Is it possible that staff, based on what the attorney just mentioned, staff can get with the Department of Education? Department of State, I'm sorry. Department of State to determine if, in fact, the money can be returned if we're not able to come up with the balance to make the project be what we wanted?
All right, so it is possible to modify the scope. So if once we do the floor plans and the construction documents, the cost is beyond what the original scope was, we would be able to modify the scope to say, okay, the 500,000 will only get us this far. We can do this, this, and this. The other things we remove from the scope, and then we can still satisfy the state grant. But that does not mean that we're ready to have people in the building for it to be operational. So again, that is my concern, is that we can satisfy the grant, but the building may still not be open for people to utilize until we come up with the remaining dollars. Now, again, that is something we won't know until after we get the floor plans and have those documents bid out to contractors. So that's kind of where we are, but I do believe we will be able to satisfy the grant, but it may mean that we modify the scope.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I'm prepared to move forward. Let's get it done. We've been talking about this for years, and the time we've been talking about this, we'll build an $80 million police station when we didn't know the budget. We'll give $2 million for private distilleries. Can we do this for bond? Absolutely, we can do it. We're having all these conversations, and I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that we need to know who's going to operate it. But we've been talking about it for 2 years. It's time to move forward. Let's get an agreement into place of what it's going to be, what is going to be who's going to be the operational partner. Is it going to be the CRA? Let's bring that to the next meeting. Let's draw up the floor plans and move forward. We can't say, we can't keep saying that there's this unknown price tag and never take the step to really design it and make what it was. We've heard from the community over and over again, what they want to see there as a true community space that can provide a variety of services that aren't available to the neighborhood. So if that's what we want to do, let's go do it.
Mr. Matlow, I think that point has been made. The vote has been taken. It was a 4-1 vote in favor of moving forward. The case has been made. Unless there's any other discussion, I think do we have any other items on the agenda? I would, the mayor had to leave. He told me he had a 3:45 hard stop. If there is no other discussion on this item, I would accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chair,
There's a motion.
other items to discuss for unagended?
Okay.
I thought we didn't have any other business.
That's what I just asked, but
Yeah.
Commissioner Matlow?
Yes.
Okay, well,
We have public comment on non-agenda, she's saying.
Sheila's checking now.
What was it a speaker card, Jackie, that for the item that we discussed?
Non-agenda.
Unagenda items.
Unagended? You have it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's, Commissioner Matlow, before we take your comments, we'll hear from Ms. Perkins. She did fill out a speaker card for unagended items. Ms. Perkins. Be careful.
It's actually not on the agenda. My name is Jacqueline Perkins, 3437 Blue Jay Drive, Tallahassee, and 1618 Keith Street. I need to just say two things, or the request is to ask this body to come to the community so that people who couldn't come, who don't have transportation, who, have other issues, that I would like to offer that as a suggestion so that those people who talk to us, who say they want to do things, that you all could come there and that maybe even to see what we're looking at. And we're also asking that we be allowed to continue in the capacity. And so I know this is close to what I want. Nobody's talking about the benefit. There's the economic benefit of having those services. Where is it that a child can find out more, or anybody, about the dangers of AI? Where is it that we can take people where toddlers can read? Where is it that we can get the mental health services? And I do understand when people are talking about a food desert, Bond is not considered a food desert because we do have 2 other stores that provide grocery. So I want to say that please look at the economic benefit. Look at what we're offering our police officers, because we're talking about, that's how this all got started, because of the crime. And there's no one who's in this room can say that that place looked like it did when you walked through that neighborhood. We don't have the crime there. We're offering officers to come in, to have coffee, to use, the pit stop. That's what we're calling it. And we want our children to grow. Where is it in Bond that you can get guitar lessons? Where is it in the Bond community that people would look and say, hey, that's a place where we can go and we can get these kinds of services? So we have, what do we say to Florida A&M, who just yesterday released an entire college to come and help us? What do we say to the school, the dean of architecture, who says, I'm going to allow my kids or my students to come in and give, just like with what Michael did? Is there no economic benefit to having those services? Sure, there are economic benefits. So, and it may not be the food, but it's actually feeding people food that they don't get somewhere else. And we have people who don't have health services. We have a doctor who will come there with nurses to do blood pressure checks and all those things. Those things are being worked out. We have Fortune 500 company individuals who are going to help and establish the business plan. And not only that, we'll have people who can come there. It was supposed to be a DOMI station. We're going to partner with FAMU's business school and the entire College of Social Sciences and architecture. And when I saw the president, I wanted to find out if we could just go ahead and get a blanket MOU so that all those agencies or all those colleges, that's the food, Commissioner. So we have people, children who can read at age 2. Well, I'm just speaking to anybody. How many places do you go to teach a toddler? And I meant to bring the picture. I can bring the video. Those are the kinds of services that we're going to offer. Okay, thank you.
Your 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. All right, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr.
For the
Chair.
good of the order.
Was that the only on-agenda speaker?
Yes.
Okay.
Two items I want to discuss. One on the bicentennial statue proposal. Are we in talks with DIA in that project of providing any type of assistance or going along with it?
That will be going to the DRC next week.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And secondly, to further our conversation from earlier, and the mayor actually alluded to it, we used to have great programs at the CRA that helped particularly entities like Hayward House move forward. You know, when I first started my business, we just hit 10 years in business. 10 years ago, we were completely broke. We were out of money. My credit score was probably in the 500s. I wasn't eligible for traditional financing. We had maxed out every opportunity we had. But we found opportunity at the CRA. There was a small business loan program that would take a chance on people, give people an opportunity. We were able to borrow $30,000 from the CRA, and I believe we paid it back within 2 years. But I don't think anyone can argue that was a bad investment in this community. And not only was I fortunate to benefit from it, it was also completely repaid. I think we've gotten away from trying to provide opportunity for people to create something in communities that traditionally have been ignored or left behind. And we've gotten to where we are today, where everything's a grant. There's no guardrails. There's no metrics. And I'd like to see us return to those types of opportunities. I do know when we have loan programs, our risk tolerance is a lot higher, can be a lot higher than traditional lenders. The benefit of it is we can actually get paid back some of that money. When we continue to only give out grants, we're not going to get any of that returned. Is it beneficial to our community to have those types of entities come up? Yes, absolutely. But I would like to see, as we keep receiving these unsolicited proposals, let's go back, see about reestablishing a loan program in Southside, and it particularly Southside, but also could be for downtown as well, and lay out the metrics of what we'll be looking for. I said earlier, I don't think the CRA should ever be more than 20% into a project, particularly because that creates risk for people, too much risk. If you can get 20% from the CRA and then go to a lender and get 80%, you don't have any skin in the game at all. And I think that is too risky of a position to entertain. But I think if we could look at loan programs where people are 10% in and we can match that 10%, make sure we have grant programs for facade. $50,000 may be an outdated number for what repairs are, looking at if we can increase that but continue the match program, and then just set that as the standards for what we're offering business, and then in our budget cap it annually. If it's $250, $350, $500 per program, so we don't end up in a case where we have $3 million unallocated and anybody can just come grab it. We don't. I have metrics in my head of what I'm personally looking for in my vote, but as an agency, we haven't laid that out. So I'd with all that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we come back with a staff item to explore having a small business loan program in both CRAs, and then raising the limit for the facade grant program to $100,000.
Commissioner Matlow, I can tell you I'm not prepared to vote on a motion like that at this point. If we had it and we don't have it now, there must be a reason why we didn't. What I would like staff to do is to bring back or do some research and determine what that program looked like, and maybe bring something back to us to discuss when we've got more information and we're more informed. There is no way I could vote on something like that today.
I understand. That's my intention, to bring it back for a conversation. It doesn't have to be a fleshed out program.
Okay. So
Second.
Mr. Chair, I'm feeling like you. I can appreciate where Commissioner Matlow is going, but the legislature has been very surgical, strategic, and many other things that I could say regarding CRAs. And I think that we need to be very, very careful. Right now, we seem to be flying under the radar a little bit with them. I don't think we need to do anything to stick our head out to get it lobbed off or draw attention from them, because then we may find ourselves out of gas completely. We've already had to come back and not fund events, so which we had been doing that before, but we had to back up on that. I would say that, staff is ready to do whatever we ask them to do, but I think we just need to proceed very carefully and not give the Florida legislature, especially with them being in town, any reason to start looking under the hood to tell us what else we can and cannot do. If we want to do that, I would suggest that we do that sometime after session.
Yeah.
And see, or what, as we prepare for the plan for the next year, to do something like that. But at this point, I have great unreadiness about even thinking about changing much of anything at this point until they leave town.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Matlow, you still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're not going to be able to impact what the legislature do. They're going to come after, whatever they pick and choose. But I mean, this is actually protects us more, I think, in the eyes of when people say that CRAs are being used irresponsibly. Like, we're asking to put up guardrails and specifics, particularly to encourage economic development. I would think that would actually be well received. But again, the motion is just to come back with an agenda item to discuss the loan program and the current grant program for discussion to see if we want to move forward with it.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
Yes, I seconded it.
There's a motion by Commissioner Matlow, or Board Member Matlow, seconded by Board Member Porter. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
That passes 3-1 with Commissioner Williams-Cox, or Board Member Williams-Cox in dissent. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. All I have is, just based on the conversation we had on the Robinson store, if you, Mr. Cox, could give us an update about our next steps and how we're working together with the community to address some of the questions that are outstanding about the grant and how the space is going to be used, those kinds of questions that were raised tonight. If you could just give us an update, maybe before our next meeting, which is March 28th. I just looked up so that we can be engaged and be helpful and be prepared as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, so we'll sign the agreement, send it off to the state so they can sign it as well, and then it'll be an official agreement. We'll be creating an RFP for an architect. The architect will be doing both the construction documents as well as the architectural consultation or consultant through the process. So we'll start on that right away to get that out so we can try to get somebody as quickly as possible. And then working with them, we'll modify the scope of work, but also the timeline that the state is having us do. So they'll allow for modifications, but they want to know what our timeline is and that kind of thing. So we'll be working on that the next couple of months, getting everything together. But the RFP will start that right away.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? There being none, we will call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.